Days of the year 2020 are difficult as the COVID-19 pandemic ravishes our nation. The spread of this new virus also exacerbates and reveals the prevalence of our nation's pandemic of systemic, economic, and racial injustice. As we prepare for a new March on Washington, it is important to recall our past with a glimpse of 1963. The 88th Congress of the United States convened in January with 12 women and 8 people of color in the House of Representatives and 2 women and 3 people of color in the Senate. 9 years following the Supreme Court ruling that separate is not equal on Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, began the year by declaring segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. Months later, he attempted to block the entry of 2 African-American students at the University of Alabama. The following night, Medgar Evers arrived home in Mississippi to be murdered in his driveway. In the same year, Martin Luther King wrote his letter from a Birmingham jail in response to white clergy wanting him to use only the courts to address racial injustice. Less than 3 weeks after the original March on Washington, Birmingham's 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed, and 4 girls, Addie Mae Collins, Carol Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley were murdered. 2 months later, television allowed the nation to witness the assassination of John Kennedy. On August 28th of that year, Martin Luther King Jr. was 34. Nancy Pelosi and John Lewis were
Leslye, I accidentally muted you. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Where do you want me to start?
John Lewis?
Okay.
It was like 2 seconds ago. I'm so sorry.
Okay, it's okay. I'll say, okay. On August 28th of that year, Martin Luther King Jr. was 34. Nancy Pelosi and John Lewis were 23. Mitch McConnell was 21. Joe Biden, 20. Donald Trump, 17. John Roberts, 8. Mike Pence, 4. Barack Obama had just celebrated his 2nd birthday, and Kamala Harris had not been born. Anniversaries call us to reflect upon significant moment in time. We remember an event, the circumstances of its unfolding. Consider the changes that have or have not occurred, and recommit to our ideals with a renewed fervor. This is what we are doing now on the 57th anniversary of the historic March on Washington. In 1963, the descendants of those Africans who had been kidnapped, involuntarily transported through the Middle Passage, and sold as chattel, so their lives were deemed solely for the economic gain of others, answered a call. For more than 3 centuries, they had been told that their dreams and desires were irrelevant, that according to the laws of God and of man, their Black lives did not matter. On this day, They prayed with their feet as they marched to the Lincoln Memorial to affirm their humanity and demand their full rights as citizens of this nation. For 100 years, the systems based upon the flawed construct of race proved to be formidable forces against the promises of the Emancipation Proclamation, as well as the 14th and 15th Amendments. The call of the 1963 March on Washington was answered with the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But economic and racial injustice have persisted. This persistence is chronicled in the disparities and inequities of citizenship, education, healthcare, economic opportunities, and immigration. Today, the world sees that our problems are not confined to certain states or regions of our nation. As Black lives continue to be valued less than property, our economic greed and systemic injustices flourish from sea to shining sea. Despite the obstacles, the great cloud of witnesses proclaims with us, Black Lives Matter.